Good day everyone and welcome to Rehab Gaming. So in this episode, we're going to take this sad Xbox One controller that's all covered in gunk. We're going to go ahead and take her apart, get her cleaned up, and make her presentable again. So stay tuned and we'll get right at it. So these are going to be the tools that we're going to use for today's project. On the far left hand side we have a couple of spudgers and a pry tool. We have an X-Acto knife here that's going to be used to cut a circle in the sticker that covers up one of the screws in the battery compartment. We're going to need a precision screwdriver and of course a precision bit set. Now the model of Xbox One controller that we're going to be working on today is going to be the model 1700. Now before you get into taking this thing apart, what you want to do is make sure that you take out your battery. So back right here behind this label is actually a screw that you're going to need access to in order to get the controller separated. So go ahead and take your battery out, set it off to the side. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut a hole right here. Otherwise, if you'd like to preserve this sticker, you can use a hot air gun and just slowly lift up the sticker over here just to gain access to that screw. But I'm not entirely worried about keeping our warranty on this controller, so it's not going to be a big deal cutting that sticker. Now, after you get the hole cut in there, you're going to want to leave the screw in, and then you're going to want to go ahead and try and pry off these back pieces here to your controller. These are snapped in using tension clips. That's where your spudger tools are going to come in, and then maybe something like this. This is actually going to give you a little more surface area to work with while you're trying to pop those up. So for starters, I'll go ahead and cut the hole there, and then I'll go ahead and grab the spudger and pop these off. Also, I wanted to mention, when you're taking off these side plastic pieces here, I like to use this leading edge just to get my tool up in there, pop it out, and then work my way along the edge on this side, and then work your way along the edge on this side. Now, once you get to this point, it is going to be a little bit tight trying to get this popped out, but just try and work it loose the best that you can. Don't put too much force on it because you don't want to break these little plastic hooks here that holds the plastic piece onto your controller. Once you have both grip coverings off, you're going to need a small H8 is what my kit says, but it's a small security Torx bit in order to get the screws out. There's going to be two screws right here on this side of the handle. This side of the handle also has two screws, and then you also have this one that was hiding underneath that sticker. So we're going to go ahead and take all of these out. Now that we have all 5 screws out, we can go ahead and take the face of the controller completely off and separate it like this. So we're going to go ahead and set this off to the side. So it actually has 2 boards. One board sets up here and has your power button, your menu buttons, and then also I believe it controls your A, B, X, Y buttons, and your joysticks are actually going to be mounted to this board here. Now, in order to get these boards separated, you used to have to take the motors and desolder them from the main board, but with the newer controllers, that's not necessarily required. So we'll go ahead and pull those off, and there's some screws down in here that we need to take out in order to get this board out. So we're going to go ahead and grab, looks like it's going to be another Torx bit. We'll go ahead and grab the proper size of Torx bit, get these 2 screws out, and try and pull this board up. So I went ahead and took the face of the controller off. It just pops off, and we took out these 2 screws down here. Those are going to be T6 Torx 6 screws, and then what we need to do is we need to separate this board from that board. And as you can tell, there's a couple of wires that are running around the side of this board here and goes over to the face of the controller here. And there's also going to be one on that side. Now, what I'm going to try and do is lift this up. I'm going to unplug this wire here. I'm going to try and flip that board over, set it off to the front. That way we don't have to unsolder any of these. Now that we have this wire unplugged, we're going to go ahead and flip the board around. And we actually need to take our joysticks off of this board. So go ahead and just pop those off. Now this board is going to be ready to lift up. So we'll go ahead, take our motors out again, lift this board up, and we're just going to try and see if we can put it up there. Might have to unclip this wire here on this side from the retainer. Alright, so these are pulled out of the retainer slots. We're going to go ahead, lift this board up. Hopefully we have a little more room to work with. We'll see if we can try and set it off to the front side. There we go. Just kind of work the wire off right here. Give us a little more play. Like that. That's exactly what we want to do with this main board here. So these are going to be your buttons and stuff like that. Looks like your B button actually goes to this board on the new controller. That's kind of interesting. That's the only button that goes to that board, but all the other ones go to this board right here. So what we actually need to do is we actually need to clean out that B button because it got some gunk down in there. And then we're also going to take off this half of the board. We're going to clean the connections and also clean up the buttons, and then it'll be ready to get all put back together. But this right here is going to be that black wire that was attached to the second board. This right here is going to be the connector that connects these two boards together. Also, what I want you to keep in mind is your audio jack is right here. It is not soldered in to any of the circuit boards. It actually just fits in right there, and it's kept in with the tension of this board being screwed down on top of the bottom board. So be mindful that when you're taking these boards out, that is going to fall out. For now, we'll take this and set it off to the side. You actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 number 6 Torx screws here. We're going to go ahead and take those out, get this board lifted up. We'll clean it up with some rubbing alcohol, and then it'll be ready to be put back together. So I stand corrected, there are actually 6 screws that we need to remove. Here, 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 there, there, and there. Or excuse me, there, and there. So we're going to go ahead and lift this board out. Be really careful because the face button for the Xbox Connect button is going to be up there. Actually, it's going to be a little easier to try and remove the bumper buttons assembly right here that keeps the bumper buttons in. So we'll go ahead and take that out. Now we got a little bit of wiggle room. We can get this board out now. So behind that board, you have all of the button membranes for your controller. Except for the D-pad. The D-pad, believe it or not, actually uses these type of buttons here, where it's like a little metal disc, and as soon as you push down on the disc, it has an arch in it. Here, there we go. So when you push down on it, that arch goes like that, and it connects down to the pad. So we're going to take this, we're actually going to clean every single one of these spots. This is going to be the Xbox button light here, but we're going to clean the board up there. We're going to get the buttons out, we're going to clean the buttons up, clean off these contact pads, and then it'll be ready for reassembly. So we took off the rubber membrane here, pulled the buttons out, cleaned them all up, went ahead and put them back in. Just so you know, each individual button is keyed per its specific hole, so you cannot put the wrong buttons in the wrong hole. Now what we need to do is do the reverse of what we did while taking it apart and get this thing put back together. Now there's a couple of tricks that you need to know, especially with this style of controller. Right here is going to be your sync button. That sync button has a little L-shaped piece that sticks out, and that likes to pull out and then drop down, and your L piece is facing towards the front of your controller. Well, that little piece actually tucks up in behind here. So we're going to go ahead and flip this over real quick, being careful with the board and try and get you in the shot. So right here is going to be that button. So that little L piece goes right here towards the Xbox button, and just make sure that that is orientated right before you try and put this thing back together. Otherwise, you're going to run into a frustration of trying to figure out why it does not want to go back together like it should. So we'll go ahead and take this board, drop it down in here, and we'll use the screw posts as guides. Make sure it's not binding on anything, and if you feel it hitting somewhere, then something's not lined up right. So you take it off, make sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and try again. There. Now it's sitting on there, it's not moving, it's not torquing or anything like that. So we need to take this and find our little hook deal here for the front space that has your sync button hole and the connector for your controller. There. And that's how you want it to snap in. So that faceplate's on. Double check to make sure that your sync button is actually working properly. Make sure that your triggers are actually pulled back and your bumper buttons aren't pushed out a little bit, because that's probably what was causing me some of the issues. Now once you get this put back together, the triggers are actually going to be depressed a little bit, and that will solve any issues if your bumper buttons are sticking right now. So we'll go ahead and take the screws, put the screws back in, and then we're going to put that board on top. Now all 6 screws are replaced, and we're going to have the task of trying to take this board here without yanking on any of the wires and getting it seated back into place. So in order to get this board lined up, you're going to have a couple of things that you need to watch out for. First of all, there's going to be this white connector right here that needs to get connected down into there. So what you want to do is kind of hold it at an angle. Make sure that you can get everything lined up. Make sure nothing is getting pinched, and also double check this black wire right here. Make sure that it is on top and it doesn't get sandwiched down below. So the biggest thing that you have to worry about is getting this connector plugged in properly, and as soon as you feel it drop into place, you can go ahead and take 2 fingers, push one behind that connector, and push down. And you're wanting to make sure that this connector here for, I believe it's like the chat pad and the audio connector, if you don't have the jack. Speaking of which, I'm glad you saw that, because that's how easy it is to forget to put this jack back in here. So we'll work that up. Pop the jack back in there. So now you have your audio jack in place. Realign your connector. Just kind of work it down in there. And then you can take your motors, set them inside the carriage here, and then trying to keep your motors into place, flip it over and reroute your wires here. These wires are actually for the rumble motors that are inside the trigger for the haptic feedback. So we just got to make sure that those get tucked up out of the way and that they're hooked back into place so they're not messing with anything. So now we have the wires routed for our trigger rumble motors. Go ahead and flip it around. Now you have this conductor right here that we took off. So this just pushes straight down on this tiny little connector right there. So you see this little copper disc right there. That's where this actually needs to clip into place. Now to make sure that it's connected properly, just wiggle it back and forth like that, just to make sure that it is connected. So now we have everything put back into the carrier assembly. That's what I like to call it. I don't know exactly if that's the correct term, but seeing as how this holds all of the components and then the shell components snaps on to this, I would consider this to be the carrier assembly. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the rest of the parts. That way they're ready to get put back together. Next thing you want to do for the reassembly is go ahead and take your joysticks or thumbsticks and put them back in place. Now that we have the thumbsticks on, we'll go ahead and take the face of the controller and we'll put it right on here. Make sure everything is lining up like it should. And we're going to go ahead and send the screws home better for this board. So I'm going to hold it in place, and then I'm going to put the screws back in for this board. We have our 2 screws in to hold on this backboard, so we're going to go ahead and take this back side of the controller housing and put it back on. So what you want to do is you want to double check and make sure that the battery tabs go inside of the battery compartment, and just double check that everything just seats on here properly. You are going to have to push your trigger buttons in for everything to set down in here, and you just want to make sure that it goes into place. So as soon as you know that everything is into place, you can go ahead and put all of the screws back in for this side of the controller. Now when I'm putting the screws back in, I like to start with the center one because that just holds everything together, and then I'm able to go around and put these 2 in on each side of the controller. So we have our screws back in. What we want to do is we want to flip the controller over, double check and make sure that none of the buttons or triggers or bumpers are sticking. Make sure that everything is moving like it should. And then you just got to put your hand grip covers back on. So what I like to do with these is I like to set them in place like so. And I like to gently rock them down in there until you feel everything click like that. So I pushed right here first and then worked my way up towards the front, and they snapped back in just perfectly. So we'll do the same thing with this side. Line up your clips, make sure that everything is aligned, push down, start with the front, then work your way up all the way to your trigger and make sure that you don't have any gaps. So that's how you completely disassemble, clean up, and reassemble an Xbox One controller. Now all we need to do with this controller is go ahead and throw the battery back in, get it hooked up to the Xbox, and test it to make sure that it works. So now that we're over here at my Xbox One console, I'm going to show you the app that I like to use in order to test my Xbox One controllers. So as you see there, it says Game Controller Tester. This is actually an application that I downloaded from the Microsoft Store, and as soon as you download it and it's ready to run, you go ahead and click on it, and it opens up to a menu like this. And let me get you a little better focused on here. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to kind of record over here by my Xbox. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect this controller to this Xbox here. Now they're all synced up, and you can see that there's a second controller connected. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the new interface, test options, turn on vibration and impulse triggers. Then we're going to click apply. So now we can go up here where it says start test on the left hand side, and we will test number 2 controller. So that's working. That's working. Test our bumpers there. You can see that those are registering. We'll test our joystick over here for the left joystick. You can see that it lights up when you click on it. Test the right joystick. Make sure that it goes back to 0. Test the D-pad buttons. Go ahead and test all of the face buttons. Test X, Y, B, and A. So everything is working perfectly, and to get out of the menu, you just hold down B and it'll take it right back to this screen. So if you stuck around thus far and dealt with my raspy voice, thank you very much. I apologize, I am sick. Hopefully I will be doing a little bit better and my next video won't sound so horrible. So that concludes today's video. Thank you for stopping by, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy the video, please feel free to hit the like button down below. Also, if you're new to our channel, please feel free to subscribe. So without further ado, thanks for stopping by, and we hope you have a wonderful day.